Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
Fair warning. This is the second episode in a row that we've recorded. If you listened to last week's episode, you will know we were drinking the Louis du Camponac Cabernet Sauvignon, product of France. We are still drinking it, but we're a little bit further along in the process.
We are. You can usually tell by the accelerated quality of our voice and how much our enunciation isn't quite on point.
Never make that sound into the microphone again.
Too late. I'm going to be doing it.
We will be talking about 1 month ago, May 13th, 2024. Mark Rosewater released the article "The Rabiah Scale, Part 3." And not long after that, the Prof on Solarian Community College released a video that was titled, I'm now paraphrasing, it was titled something along the lines of "The Reason Why Returning to Magic Planes Doesn't Work." It's something around that line. So there's this idea, this top of mind, to use a very 2012 American politics term, if you get that reference, good on you. Very top of mind idea around returning to certain planes, why it works, why it doesn't work. We're in a current state where it's all like, we're one set here and one set there. Bloody.
We're going through planes much more quickly. Like, one of the things I noticed off the back of this was, like, there aren't actually that many. And it isn't an exhaustive list. If you were to look at, say, all of the invasion cards, there are many invasion cards that talk about certain planes that are not listed on this, or I think any previous Rabiah Scale list. Just because it's a little shot in the dark. Xerix being one of them. Gobel Khan, for example, being another that just don't get mentioned because their current presence in the world of Magic is so small, it's not really worth looking at.
It's so, I mean,
and I guess also these are places that already had sets on them, right?
Well, so the Rabiah Scale is specifically about sets that you need to return to.
Because Vryn is listed here, but we only really kind of very briefly went on in Magic Origins, right? I guess, which is why it's in here, same with Chandala being where we went to the Anarchy and saw a little bit of that. Also, I think in Magic Origins. So, okay, I guess I'm speaking out of turn. There's a lot of planes that we know of in the multiverse that we haven't been to yet.
This is not this conversation. We've also had this conversation slightly before, and I think a lot of the planes that we wanted to see, there's maybe one or two, like Kaldheim, that we were like, well, we know it's going to happen, so we're going to throw it in as a thing of like, I wonder what it's going to be like. But things like Gobel Khan, Xerix, or like fucking Equilor is always the one that I use.
Yeah, they're not going to be on this list because they haven't been to yet, so there isn't a return to effect of it, because the whole point of this scale is, how likely will we go back to this place once we've already been to it once? You can go anywhere once.
So, the Rabiah Scale, this is the third Rabiah Scale Marrow's written. There are going to be... What I'm going to do is we're going to go through the article, we're going to kind of section it off, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us. But we're going to base this around the article that he wrote. So it's kind of a reaction podcast. Now, the Rabiah Scale is based on certain criteria. He first did the Storm Scale, which is about mechanics.
Yep.
This is now about play settings. So I'll run through the criteria that go into the Rabiah Scale, 1 being very likely, 10 being very unlikely. Is that right?
Yeah, there's also the Venser Scale for Planeswalkers.
There is a Venser Scale. So, first bit of criteria is popularity.
Yeah.
I'm not going to run through in detail, but there's very popular, liked, or unpopular. They're all very self-explanatory.
And it all kind of comes from the nebulous market research that somehow WotC does that we... I mean, I know it's all these random, like, do you want to fill in this survey? But I think this is, nebulous because it's really hard to tell exactly where they get this information from.
Unpopular, for example, means that our research puts this plane at the bottom 25%. Percent of what? We're not quite sure.
Yeah.
Falling in this last section does decrease the chance of return. So that's popularity. That's the first criterion. The second criterion is mechanical identity. So strong. This means the plane is strongly associated with one or more mechanical components.
Oh, crime in South London.
Another bit of crime. This makes it easier to design, more likely to excite players, and increases its chances of return. Average, this means the plane has some mechanical associations, but not as strong as they could be. And weak, the plane has little to no mechanical associations. This decreases the chance of return.
This is the Mel side.
Yeah.
And then we move into the Vortho side.
Creative identity.
Yeah.
Strong, this plane has a very clear identity. For example, if you saw a random card, you'd know in a heartbeat that it comes from this plane. And that's something we talk about a lot with cards in our flavor picks.
Yeah, and I guess like looking at, say, even last episode with Modern Horizons, where it's a bit more, you can't really tell immediately because it's multiple planes in one set. Again, where does that identity come from?
Average. This plane has an identity, but not quite as crisp as and delineated. I love that word. I always use delineated in contexts where that doesn't really make sense.
So it's nice to get it right for once.
Well, Marrow got it right.
Okay.
And weak. This plane's identity is not as cohesive as the planes would like to be. And then we have room for expansion. Significant room for expansion. This means the plane has many new things to return and explore in. Some from room for expansion. This means the plane has now some new things to explore and return in. There is double crime.
Oh, there's so much crime.
And minimal room for expansion. This means the plane would struggle to find new things to explore. And then we have story continuation as the fourth pillar. Major plot line. This plane set up as a story and stories that players have been asking about. Minor plot line. This plane set up a story or stories that players have been asking about, but less. Okay, bit of a
So
waste.
nebulous. So ridiculous.
And then minimal to no plot line. Yeah. This plane set up a story or stories that players have not been asking about or didn't set up any stories.
Yes. No one gives a fuck.
This one seems really the funniest to me because if you're like, okay, I swung for a mechanic, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
Magic's infinitely
but literally no one gives a shit about this place.
I wrote this little story, and everyone went, "Don't care about your little story."
I don't know anything that automatically, in my mind, falls into that because even something like Chandelier, I'm like, yeah, but the Anarchy, the Chain Veil.
But do you know why that is? Because we're Vorthos.
Yeah, we actually care about even
the
little things.
We go, look at this fucking thing.
This is the thing, right? So the two shades, right, the two splits, right, is mechanical identity, creative identity, both of them, being a matter of how people see them. Room for expansion being like, is there anything more you can do with it? Again, so the two shades being room for expansion and story continuation. Is there more to be done from a story-wise point of view? I think those two things should kind of be closer together, because I guess one is mechanical technically, but you wouldn't go back to a plane that doesn't have story continuation anyway, right? Unless you go, mutate was so cool, throw any fucking story at it and it will work, I guess is the flip side to that, right? Of where there might even be, could you say, for example, argue Murders of Karlov Manor was, we really want to do a specific theme, a creative room for expansion, we've got lots of things we can do with clues, chuck a murder mystery, it doesn't really matter where it happens. Maybe that's where that comes in. And that's maybe why it's so easy to go to Ravnica, because it's such an established plane that you can kind of throw anything in there and it kind of works, because you can just go, I'll just put some named characters in and I'm sure it'll make it work.
100%.
Yeah.
So from this point onwards, what we're going to do, as I said before, is we're going to go down the article, and I think maybe if we look at the planes he discusses now, he writes down the thoughts and feelings. I don't have to go through all of them, but we'll say, we'll tell you, the listener, what the popularity was, what the mechanical identity was in terms of it being strong or popular or whatever. And then you and I can kind of sort of...
Yeah, we don't need to repeat what he says. We can kind of go from an everyman point of view of, do we... Again, the popularity we don't really care about. The other three things, or other four things, are kind of more important, right?
So here I'm going to do a quick fire. This is a little bit like our story breakdowns. A quick fire of the other planes he's previously mentioned in part 1 and 2 of this series of articles.
Which was released at the same time, by the way.
Yes.
Or within the same couple of weeks.
Within the same sort of sphere. And then also he's done a little thing of the quick recap of planes that they have visited since 2018 that were on that Rabiah scale.
Yeah, so they're now not on that scale now because we've already got a kind of a number for them.
So, correlated Rabiah scales 4. Alara, 5. Amonkhet, 5. Very fucking nondescript.
Oh, also, did we say that 1 is more likely and 10 is less likely?
I think I did, but then I questioned it.
Okay, cool, yeah. So 10, Rabiah being a 10 means that it's absolutely not going to go back to. Dominaria being a 1 is, of course, we're going to knock back there at some point.
Indeed.
Cool.
Alara, 5. Amonkhet, 5. Dominaria, 1. Fiora, 6. Boo. Innistrad, 1. Yeah, of course. Ixalan, 4. Kaladesh, 5. Kamigawa, 8. Lorwyn Shadowmoor, 7. Marcadia 9, New Phyrexia 5, Phyrexia 9, Rabiah 10, Wrath 9, Ravnica 1, Ragartha 6, Chandelier 7, Tarkia 4, Theros 3, Ulgrotha 9, Vryn 6, and Zendikar 2. And then a quick recap of the planes that they've visited since 2018. And he says here specifically, not counting March of the Machines, which visited almost all of them. Clever.
I guess cross, what they call it, the crossover ones, like your Secret Wars, your Infinity War episodes. They don't really count if they do everyone together.
Do you know I never watched the Secret Invasion TV show?
It's not really very worth it.
Sam Jackson.
Yeah, he's fine. That's about it.
Dominaria 1, Dominaria United and Brothers War, so they did return there.
Yeah.
Innistrad 1, Innistrad Midnight Highland Crimson Vow. Ixalan 4, Lost Cannons of Ixalan, makes sense. Kamigawa 8.
And that was the outlier. That was the one everyone had a question mark over.
Neon Dynasty. New Phyrexia 5, Obi-Wan. Now, 5 is wild.
So the reason that he did this originally, what the justification was, is because New Phyrexia is really hard to go back to without specific story implication. Phyrexia Obi-Wan is specific story implication.
Great.
You can't go back there unless you're doing something big because it puts you in such an extreme circumstance. And that's what they did. They used it as the finale for their big,
I suppose 5 is in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Ravnica 1, Ravnica Allegiance, War of the Spark, and Murders of Karloff Manor.
Yeah. This was in 2018. A lot of stuff has happened since
A lot of stuff
then.
happened. Theros 3, Theros Beyond Death, Zendikar 2, Zendikar Rising.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All makes sense. Future sets that are coming up.
We know we're going back to Lorwyn. And
Which
that was a 7.
7 rating.
So this is going to be... And I guess we could say, right, so let's look at Lorwyn being a 7 and match it to something similar, Kamigawa being an 8. Big overhaul, big focus on, I guess, creative inspiration. I don't think you have to be so careful with Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. No, none of the Germanics were getting really up in arms that you were misrepresenting their Germanic fairy tale culture. So I think you don't have to worry about that so much. But it's a much harder plane because why would we go back when a lot of people didn't like it because there were no humans in it? Because that's fucking weird. It's also funny that the average Magic player doesn't like a set that doesn't have humans in it. And that's proven. But
Is
for
it?
Well, yeah, because clearly, their popularity, of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor was really
Isn't
low.
that funny? Because everyone in our sphere is
Yeah.
there are no humans in this
Exactly,
set,
right? So it's one of those conjecture things of where we can't talk for what everyone around the rest of the world, not even just outside of our play group, are experiencing. But the Shadowmoor Lorwyn thing I think it was also a matter of it was class-based rather than creature-type-based. It was a bit of both. I think there was a lot of things in it that were fiddly. And I think it was also there wasn't any it didn't sit anywhere in the long-term Magic story. It was just random little fairy tale play, which back then that was weird. Why are we going to this place that isn't connected to everything else? So maybe now we're in a place of where going back to Lorwyn is way more popular and way more likely to be viable. And then there's also the question mark of now we've done Eldraine, you'd have to be even more careful because that really took a massive portion of what Lorwyn was. And if they're willing to go back, that means they've found something else to focus on. We can only hope that somehow, with Eldraine and Bloomburrow in the works already, that somehow Lorwyn can carve its own little niche of the multiverse
Well,
back
that's
out
the
again.
issue, isn't it? Because Neon Dynasty had the time skip.
Yeah. And you need the story relevance. So going back to these pillars, mechanical identity, it did a load of random stuff. It did untapping, it had chroma, it had all the different kindred, it had of kindred being a natural ability within the set, and now also the typing that tribal was changed to. They're probably not going to redo Kindred again properly in a set. I know we did a couple of cards in Modern Horizons 3, but they're probably not going to do it again.
Would this not be the set where they try and solidify it as
Yeah, but again, then you would have put that on Atraxa, because it's a set that's coming out in the next couple of years. They've put Battle on her, but they haven't put Kindred on her, which kind of indicates they're likely not to consider it another type in the future. I also don't think any of the new Tarmogoyf cards from Modern Horizons 3 Commander set listed Kindred as one of the types. I don't know for sure, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Also smart.
Just magic.
And really sexy.
Thank you. Stop it. It's the wine. But yeah, anyway, the other one being Tarki's coming up. We already knew that there was this kind of big thing of we don't know where the plane has ended up now that we've gone back through time a couple of times. And now the dragons are on top. Maybe now we've noticed now that the dragons being on top isn't a good thing. And that'll be a cool thing to tackle.
Wait, you mean them wearing humans as jewellery isn't a good thing?
Well, all the dragons being dead wasn't a good thing either. Everyone was dying.
All right, well, fucking spot the dragon apologist in the room.
You see what I mean? But then that's a conversation that Magic players are having, and maybe it's a conversation that then translates into a set.
Why don't
well.
you and Sarkin fucking find a room?
Fucking love that man. Now he's got that little rogue streak in his hair. Hello, Daddy. Come. Get all draconic on me. Top of the list for sets that haven't already been talked about in one of these articles. We have Arcavios. Previously seen Strixhaven School of Mages, drifting by all of the categories really quickly. Popularity, very popular. Mechanical identity, strong.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had the 5 factions. Creative identity, strong. Each of those factions had a pretty cool re-identification of that pairing.
Yeah, fully agree.
Which is quite cool. Room for expansion, some room for expansion. Notably, we only spent time in one little school, one tiny little story arc in the grand scheme of the plane. Haven't seen very much. I've only seen one particular continent. We know that there were the Blood Ages. We know that there's these weird fucking archaics out there. There's definitely more to explore.
The Arik definitely have more going for them than just being enemy school.
Exactly,
people.
but because they've only hinted at all of these things, there isn't a concrete, we need to go back there, but there's definitely, as they put, some room for expansion. Story continuation, it says minor plotline. Kasmina has never felt so marginalised in all her fucking life. I know this isn't where she's necessarily from, But this, her recruiting Will and Rowan, her having this whole Shadow Council thing, if they don't go back there and tackle that at some point, it's weird. But then you also get to the point of where, like, what is it with the Eternals in the Marvel universe, where they go, all of these bad things happen, why didn't you step in then? Because it's kind of like, if Kasmine is building this super crazy group of people to handle problems, there's been lots of problems.
Well, no, I think I do agree, though, with the minor plot line, because Marrow in this article outlines that, okay, Onyx is there, Kasmine is there, but Quintorius sparked and left.
Yeah.
And I think, very much like a real school, the story isn't about you being at school.
No, it's what you do afterwards.
And this is a little bit why I don't vibe with the Spielbergian, like, kids at high school filmology trope fetishization that we seem to have, is because I don't really give a shit about kids getting beat up in their lockers.
No.
I want to know about the fucking CEO corporations they build and burn.
Yeah, we all know you're going to struggle through your 20s. Let's get to your 30s when your lives are interesting.
We all have shit childhoods. Don't fucking... Yeah, but, like, so, I mean, no, not to be glib, but
yeah.
I think the best way they do this set is they do a Brothers War on it. And they have the main characters through some weird Arik experiment or some rogue teacher that's like, I'm going to teach you a history lesson. We're going to go fucking back in time by 1,000 years. And
That'd
they
be
fuck
so
off.
sick,
They
right?
fuck off back. And also, I think one of Strixhaven's biggest sort of criticisms, outside of the Harry Potter nonsense, which is one version,
which they also did a really good job of
which they did.
siding
you have
around.
to give them that.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest criticisms was it was kind of one of those sets that really was, because it was so high concept for a modern idea of what a school is. A lot of it was very sort of memeified. There was also a lot of criticism maybe about some of the crueler aspects of the school with the black-white faction.
Sure.
So the way they
it didn't feel
rectified
grounded, right?
No, well, yeah, I just kind of feel like it was all very much like, here's high school, but it's magic.
It felt like a Disney Plus
A little
set.
bit.
Yeah.
It felt very much like that. And when it's one of those sets that I think sometimes to its like the derogatory term is, some cards feel like they belong in Strixhaven, which is never a good thing.
Yeah. I do think some of their expressions of magic felt way more like, again, Harry Potter-y.
Well, I thought a lot of that was fine.
Fine, fantastic. I like things like words becoming magic because words are magic, you know?
I think the way they fix this is they go back to the Blood Age, or they do something where the Arik bring back the ways of the Blood Age.
Yeah.
Because then you have a very quite cruel, and I mean that in the kind of like grimdark way, not just because I like horrible, violent shit. Like, I think in a grimdark way, you get a thing where it's like, remember this bright, happy, like, sort of palate cleanser set?
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to have fucking blood magic.
Well,
like, you know.
if we think about, I think all but like one or two of the faculty were fractionized and killed. We know that was confirmed within the story that we saw where all the students are going through the library and they're like, oh shit.
I didn't like that stuff.
No, it was a bit too, it was Breakfast Club meets Scooby-Doo.
It fucking was, yeah.
And it's like neither of those things needed to be the other. It has been confirmed that it is a plane that we're going back to. Mary says in his article that it was announced last year it's going to be yachting, so we are going back there. And again, I don't think they're likely to do a throwback Brothers War set for it yet, but it would be nice for them to have this, like, look, the school system is now broken down. Now we actually really need to focus on what Kasmina was up to. Maybe there's some dark kind of foreboding intentions happening. And again, with a plane that was already very attached to the rest of the multiverse, what does Omen Paths add to that?
Yeah, I mean,
how is it developed? Has it now become an exchange program? Is it going to lean even harder into that school aspect, or are we going to see something outside of the school and ignore that? But then, does that also then just make it a very different set? Why would you go back to Strixhaven and not use this academic property that's already there? Why would you go back to Strixhaven and go, cool, we're not actually going back to Strixhaven, we're going back to Arcavios, leave the school behind.
This is the problem with the entire modern approach to plane building. By modern, I mean post-War of the Spark. Is because you have a lot of high-concept planes that, because they only have to stay there in one set, they only have to really build one location, which means that when you go back to it, you have to kind of go to that location. So, I referenced
10th district. We never see any other districts.
Yeah, I referenced the Prof's video. There are three main points that came from that video that kind of stuck in my head, and one of them was, I think he got this law slightly wrong. I'm not going to throw him under the bus here, but the point was sound.
He's not the strongest.
Well, he's read a lot, but the point was sound, where he was like, what happens when you go across the waters in the docklands of Innistrad? Like,
the idea for them is that there's like
Innistrad's a flat Earth.
It's limited, yeah. It's almost like Ragnarok, where you get to a certain point where the mist almost turns you back.
His idea is that you have the regions of, like, Kessig, Stenzia, like Thraben, all these kind of areas, but they're all on one island. So, but there is also a strong water ship dock theme. Could be like how, like, medieval Japan kind of just their boats only really sailed around their own islands.
Yeah,
But
they
what
didn't
happens if
actually
they
go long distance.
What if they cross and they go to another place where there's like different beasts?
Yeah.
So I think with Strixhaven, yes, you're right. They have to go back to the school, but there isn't just, even in the article, he goes, there isn't just the school. That's the thing. There's a whole southern continent.
Do you reckon it's too twee just to go? We're going on a field trip.
No, I think that's
Magic
absolutely...
School Bus.
Magic School Bus.
We could do Magic School Bus, and then we'll just get on the back of Belladros, and they'll just go flapping off. Because there's also the Snarls, like there's a lot of cool, interesting
so
magic
much
implication.
Stuff. You can't give us a Planeswalker's Guide to Arcavios and be like, it's a 2-continent plane, but the school's in this one bit of the northern continent.
And you go, so there's a whole other continent.
A fucking continent.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't like, and the last point before we move on, because otherwise we'll be here forever. We saw from Luca's point of view a little bit of what outside the school looks like, and it did feel a little bit kind of like the shit part of Ikoria.
Well, I kind of
where
feel...
you go,
it's
all
like...
of the humans aren't really developed, there's not a lot going on. It's actually a lot of it's a lot of random miles and miles and miles of just people having really rudimentary lifestyles.
I think there's a lot of Ivy League American University.
Who writes films about the poor people in their hometowns?
Well, yeah, but I think there's
you write the films about fucking the high school chads doing bullshit, right?
Guess. I mean, the UK is slightly different because when we talk about like things like Oxford, Cambridge, like St Andrews or whatever, they're in quite prominent cities which have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think the US, which is what Strixhaven was based off of, I think there's a lot more diversity where some college towns are actually worse off.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Eldraine.
So, Eldraine had a popularity of popular, mechanical identity of average, which is interesting. I think it's because the Camelot side didn't really pierce through in
That's the thing, it was top-down, and only some of the top-down worked.
The creative identity worked, because obviously it has a lot to pull on.
Yeah. I think everyone can look at cards and go, I understand what this is referencing, and that probably means it's from this set.
Room for expansion. Maro's put it down as room for expansion.
And this is notably after both Throne and Wilds of Eldraine.
Which I kind of disagree with. Because they set themselves up to have this Realms and Wilds dynamic. Mm-hmm. But by virtue of the Wilds, that's an infinite possibility.
I think the thing that they have to realise now is that they've did a big focus on the Realms with a touch of the Wilds, and they've did a big focus on the Wilds with a touch of the Realms. Now, the focus will have to be on what is the story point, which... major plot line is the story continuation grading for this plane, because it took a beating in the last Phyrexian War, and then both Rowan and Will are having this kind of conflict of how to lead the plane. Now that could be a combination of the Wilds and the Realms kind of finding peace between the two of them, and that could be the entire plane. The entire focus of that set is no longer the Wilds or the Throne. It's just maybe the set is literally just called Eldraine. And it's no longer at the separation, it's now about the unity.
Do you know, it's going to be called Wars of Eldraine.
Don't, just Eldraine. Don't take away from my succinctness. Wars of Eldraine. The battle for Eldraine.
The battle for Eldraine. That's cool.
Mm.
Better than Battle for Zendikar.
Yeah, but they wouldn't do that 'cause it's the same. That's what I mean. I think sometimes it's also nice that after a while you have a few times of going to a plane and then you realise that they're just going to call it just the name. You're like, oh shit, they didn't do that yet, did they?
I mean, So I think the story beats are obviously bigger than maybe the creative beats. So the Rabiah Scale is 4 overall.
Did we say what the Rabiah Scale for Arcavios was? 3.
Yeah, very.
So yeah, because we know we are actually going back to it.
I think,
which is interesting because we know we're going back to it, but it's still listed as a 3, which means they know they're going back to it, but it was a challenge to design for.
Which is, I think that's
fair.
Honest way of being. Yeah. I feel like maybe I know it's got a major plot point, which maybe would be a dangling thread, but they've already dangled Rowan and Will threads with fucking Garruk.
Yeah. Also, where the fuck is Garruk?
Where the fuck's Garruk? We haven't seen him since.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do Eldraine for a while. Not only because we went there recently, but because they've done both sides of the coin. Because we've seen both sides of the coin fairly recently, and I know original Eldraine is 6-7 years ago now or whatever, but that's still, for us, that's still recent enough that we don't need to see both sides of the coin together for a fair while, because I feel like when we talked about Eldraine, they hit the nail on the head of delivering that set and squeezing as much as they could out of that set to make that set feel it having depth, having breadth, and having a lot of creative integrity that I'm like, I'm kind of done. I'm saturated.
Yeah.
I don't need it again for a while.
Yeah.
The story was pretty fucking good. It was a story that also had someone from a different... No, Kellen, that's where Kellen came from. That was the original Kellen plane. But his his story was compelling enough, and then because it actually kind of delivered all those sets down the line, I'm like, we've kind of done our Eldraine thing. You know, I actually cared more about Kellen and his fucking off and finding fancy fairy dad than Rowan and Will complaining about the monarchy.
Yeah, well, I think we've said this before many times that Will and Rowan they're both dickheads.
Yeah, and they're also cookie cutter. Like, unless you give them something more interesting, it's just the Stampy, you don't understand me, and all I'm trying to do is good. Like, great, cool, we see that all the time. That's Pinky in the Brain.
Yeah.
You're just doing Pinky in the Brain, but as a siblings. And again, unless you make it, I think they're kind of maybe a pair that it would have been more interesting to leave as Planeswalkers, because then Will would refuse to leave.
And Rowan would fuck off.
Would want to, but because they had to be bind, you know what I mean, right? That would have been more interesting. Anyway.
Yeah.
Ikoria.
Right, interesting one, isn't it?
Previously seen in Ikoria lair of behemoths. Is it behemoths or behemoths?
I've always said behemoths.
I always like behemoth, and I don't know why, but I know it's wrong. Popularity. Popular. So apparently this was the best-selling Premier set of the year when it came out.
I just don't believe that.
Doesn't sound right?
I just don't believe.
Think about it.
Was it the first COVID set?
Yes, and think about it. It was Godzilla set. It was the big kaiju set. And to be fair, it was pretty fucking cool. Remember we said both art directions, both the comic side and the hyper-realistic side, both did a really good job. And this is some of the first, like, multiple alt direction for artworks.
We did, didn't we?
And people bought it. They bought the shit out of it.
We spoke to Vorthos Mike
Yeah,
about
the thing that we look at, and what we'll look at as we go down, and one of the things that's really interesting, is that it doesn't seem to have a lot to go back for. So, popularity, popular. Mechanical identity, average. Creative identity, average. Room for expansion, some from expansion. Story continuation, minimal plot line.
But it's still...
It's still a 5. And it's right down the middle. 5. And do you know why? It's because Wizards cares about one thing more than anything else. Do you know what that word is? Popularity. It was popular. All of the other things are shallow. But because it was popular, Wizards are way more likely to go back there and re-explore it because people enjoyed the plane. And then they'd have to... And this is where I think a plane is likely to lose favour. Something like, say, Innistrad, where Midnight Vow and Crimson Hunt... Got it right. Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow. Don't know. I don't know why. I've never got that wrong before. But maybe why that fell a little short is that the popularity of a plane doesn't necessarily justify the returning to it. Especially for 2 sets. I think that was the biggest issue that people had with those 2 sets, is it was 2 more sets of Innistrad. No one can eke that much out of a plane that has a fairly shallow identity.
Do you know what saves Ikoria?
Spiky crystals?
Omen Paths.
Yeah, Omen Paths really big.
Because now...
Is it cooler people going there and going, holy shit, or is it cooler having Zilortha go through one and everyone being like, holy shit?
We have the fucking human factions of Ikoria, the fascist one, the hippie Skycloud one, the militant fucking Lava Brink one, going to other planes and bringing back a fucking Kaladeshi ether cannon to fucking hit Godzilla in the face with.
See, you say that. Do you know what I have the idea of? I have the idea of a Hydra from Theros wandering through and then suddenly going, no, shit. The fact that the Ozolith is broken, does that mean that they're no longer mutating? No, it can't be, because Zilortha created mutations to protect against fractionization. Yeah. Cool. So, you have random fucking...
The Ozolith had no bearing on the
Yeah,
story.
we still don't know who that fucking voice was. Could be anyone. Limdal, who cares? The big thing is random monsters of the multiverse wandering into Ikoria, getting super swole, growing wings, going back through another Omen Path, and it's like, imagine like being on, I don't know, like having a nice like day in Ravnica, like sipping on a coffee, and then a demon from Innistrad has gone through Ikoria, spouted gorilla arms and dragon wings, and then come through to Ravnica just to go, hi, can I join your tea party? That's what the Omen Pass could be, right? And I'm glad it's not that,
Do you reckon
that's stupid.
Rakdos is going to go to Ikoria and start having like boxing matches with
Right,
Godzilla,
but you know what I mean? Like the problem with Ikoria is because it's wild mutations, it kind of really fucks with the metaphysics of other planes. Because we haven't really got a pure understanding of how it works on Ikoria in isolation. And imagine like random creature spawns from another plane and you bond with it, or as a bonder you go to another plane and bond. You know, like the implications are very cool, yes, but I think they're hard to articulate and they're hard to like put into card form. Also, things like mutate was a really like very difficult mechanic to try and expand more. People want more of it because they like it, but it's so complicated. You have an Ivy deck, you understand. So it's a very difficult plane, I think. Also, it was cash grab, right? It was in the moment Godzilla.
It was the first time they tried to bring another IP in as a selling point.
Godzilla, even in the most recent iteration with the Godzilla X King Kong kind of flopped a little bit, so you've kind of lost.
Godzilla -0 was good though, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but you've lost your cash grab in the moment kind of thing of where Godzilla's unlikely to be super 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 relevant again. So if that was the point of it and doing all those artworks, does it then still work? I don't know, and that's probably why it still sits and goes, yeah, popularity, yes, but they're going to have to find another hook for it. And you could find various other hooks for it, but as we went through, the human side of it is fairly flat. I mean, yeah, there's interesting and intrigue about it, but apart from like giving them a cool character arc of how to get out of their rudimentary thinking of things, which again, Omen Pass might do. Politics between Omen Pass is something we haven't really explored.
I think the human factions in Ikoria, I mean, we did a whole episode on this, are more complicated than Magic wants to do right now.
Yes, and you can't really catch the nuance of it without doing a big old novel like you used to do during the Thran. You know, we're not in that era of Magic anymore. So that, again, that Saturday morning cartoon television glimpse of a plane, how do you do that with as much integrity as you did the first time when you haven't got Godzilla to ride the back of it? That's kind of what I'm thinking, and I think that's what they probably look at as well. Kaldheim.
Interesting one. So Kaldheim... Popularity, popular.
Yes.
Mechanical identity, average.
Good reason for that.
Go on.
They did 10 things in one.
And they did half of them not that well.
Exactly.
Creative identity, strong, of course.
Because they had 10 different identified different planes.
And you know what? I think...
Also, the whole taking Norse and just going, we run with the whole thing of it.
They made realms work.
Yeah.
Like, they did a multiverse in a multiverse.
Also, actually, thinking about it, they've done this twice now. They did it with 5 in Alara, and everyone loves Alara. I think it's the biggest plane now that we don't know we're going back to that people really want to go back to. Mm-hmm. Now that we're taking off Lorwyn, it's the next big one that people are like, please let's go back to Alara that they haven't confirmed that it's going to happen yet. That's 5 different planes that worked. Yeah, okay, Alara Reborn was a bit clusterfucky. You can't do every card's a multicolored card set without it feeling a bit gimmicky. Then you did 10 realms with Kaldheim, and again, you say popularity, popular. Creative identity, strong. You can do a million things in one place really, really well, which maybe kind of proves if you did 3 sets or 2 sets for Kaldheim, that's got to have worked, right? Surely. Because the biggest concern for Kaldheim is you didn't do all of the things justice, because you didn't have enough time to do it in. You tried to fit it all into one set. Then why did you try and fit it all into one set?
Well, so the Rabiah scale for Kaldheim is only a 4, considering everything is strong.
Yeah, well, it says, I cut you up, sorry. The room for expansion, significant, story continuation, major plot line.
Because it basically is the Omen Path.
Well, the world tree is now gone. They had to burn the world tree within Kaldheim to...
But isn't the idea that there's like a regrowth of it?
Yes, but again, we don't know because we haven't gone back there yet, so we don't know what that means. All we know is the biggest thing in their world system, their metaphysical world system, is now blown up, destroyed. What does that mean when we go back?
But the Rabiah scale is 4, and Marrow said as quote, I'm going to quote this passage, "The plane has a strong flavour that players want to see more. There's a solid mechanical core. There's even major storyline left unresolved. The trickiest part of the return is tackling the same problem from the first visit, good self-awareness. How do you fit so much into a single set?"
Because you don't.
You just do the other half.
You just don't do one set. You
do a 2 set.
You do a 2 set, and I know they keep saying, "Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work." I'm like, but you also see how single sets limit you so much that you start ruining your IP.
Well, Guilds and Allegiance of Ravnica did the 10 colour pairings 5 and 5.
I feel like that was their last time of going, we do this because it's Ravnica and people love Ravnica. If you're saying that this is as popular as you say it is, this could be your new Ravnica.
Yeah.
Kaldheim could be your new Ravnica. You could do 2 sets, not 3 sets because I know people love 3s, but you could do the half and half thing. Do it like it's a Ravnica set, but do it different. Do it in a whole different place where it's mystical, not metropolitan. The different, the Golgari isn't a graveyard mechanic, it's a tribal mechanic again. You have so much opportunity if you break the idea that everything has to be a single set. And this is really worrying. If he's looking at everything through the lens of, does it have to be a single set? So if it does, then this is the answer. Or is it, we know that everything's going to be single set moving forward, so this has to be the answer? Because this kind of sentence makes me feel like, but do you not ever question that this is so popular and there is so much creative exploration that it justifies doing 2 sets instead of doing 1 set? Instead of going, we can't do this because we can't fit it in 1, you go, we have to do 2 sets because this set needs 2.
Yeah.
Like, surely, and he doesn't actually comment on that at all, and I feel like that's very frustrating, especially going into the next one, because there's very easy planes to write off very quickly, and then there are other planes that you can write off by going, it's a 4 instead of being a 1 or a 2, and then just create problems for yourself by being so strict. And again, I can't speak for this fucking stupid market research thing that he does, of where he says, players don't like this one thing, and they don't like when you spend too long on one plane. It's like, but if you do cow time, you're not on the same plane. You're on 5 realms, and then 5 realms.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally the answer to your problem, surely. I don't know. Could you do Esper the set?
No.
Could you do these 5 realms the set?
Yes.
So
because it
shut
has
up.
diversity and
shut up, do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you cover, and then you do the thing of where we have 5 colours in Magic and we represented all of them. You've done that. You've done the 5. Just try it. Please, just try it.
Magic, just try it.
Just try it. Kylem. Do you know what's really funny is the artwork for this, we haven't mentioned any of the artworks, is Bountiful Promenade, full scale. I'm falling more and more in love with this artwork. It's super minimalistic. You can kind of see how rudimentary the art style of it is, and yet I don't know why I love it. Kylem seems like a really cool place to go for as a tourist. Go and watch some really good...
Kylem is the ultimate tourist destination.
So cool.
We did an episode of Tourist Destinations of the Multiverse, I'm sure.
Yeah, did we mention Kylem?
I don't know if was Battlebond out at the time.
I don't know. I don't remember how far back we're going, but yeah, like Kylem seems great. Anyway, it was previously seen in Battlebond. Popularity, liked. Mechanical identity, average. I disagree with that. I think the 2-headed giant thing is more than average.
Average? As if bringing in the 2-headed giant, the partner's mechanic...
Like, they might mean it in terms of, like, how many more mechanics can they involve, but I'm like, even with the mechanics you had, there's different ways to explore it.
It's literally all magic fighting each other.
Yeah, it's so cool. I don't know.
It's mixed martial arts.
Creative
magic.
identity, weak, understandably. It's literally got a very one-dimensional aspect to it. Room for expansion, significant room because there was so little explored, but story continuation, minimal, no plot line. Of course, this was an ancillary set.
Will and Rowan, talking of Will and Rowan, were there.
But otherwise, it was a reprint set. You might have had some new cards that made sense in the set. Like
it wasn't doubling season in the set.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Because it's the double set.
Seaboard
it's the
Muse
2
as well.
Yeah, because you get to untap on everyone else's, because we both get to.
You and I have played a lot of Battlebond.
Yeah, and we've done quite well in it as well.
The one time I didn't play with you, you absolutely crushed me with someone else.
Oh, mate, but that was different.
In our play group.
That was so funny.
If we say there's 8 or 9 people in our play group, the 2 people who play the most limited just happened to be on the same Battlebond
Hey,
team.
we didn't click the fucking spin roll thingy, it just happened. And as soon as it happened, we both looked at each other and went,
me and our poor
screwed.
friend Will, who was looking at me being like, I don't play limited, is this good? And me thinking, Nathan builds my limited decks.
Yeah, there was that moment of where we literally sat there looking at, like, we sat there and looked at each other and went, well, this is going to be ridiculous. Because like it's not just the playing limited, it's the drafting. The drafting is the hardest thing, especially like if you're there like having a couple of drinks, like in a nice environment. Like a draft can go downhill very quickly or can go uphill very quickly. Yeah, and we drafted some nonsense. It was great. Big fan.
Complete ruin of the vacation.
Yeah. No, it didn't. It might have. So Rabiah Scale for this for Kylem is 8. It's kind of obvious. This wasn't a premier set. This was an ancillary set. It didn't have a lot going for it. It's like trying to go back to Chandelier because Modern Horizons 2 focused on it. Like, you don't have much to go back to. As much as it says it has room for expansion, significant room, the nail on the head, and I'm going to quote him specifically here, is that yeah, it's a mostly blank canvas, but why not just do a new plane that could have more to build around? And the only thing that I really need answered about Kylem is how the fuck they built those roads.
Yes.
What are they built on? Is there a ground underneath?
I kind of feel like with Kylem, as much as I rally against, and I've mentioned it almost every episode for about a year now, the memification of Magic, I feel like when they just went, look, we like esports, pro wrestling, all those kind of sports entertainment things. Let's do Magic in a sports entertainment setting. So they put a lot from like tag team wrestling. They put a lot from esports in that set. It is kind of the meme set, but because it took itself seriously, it worked.
It had Oculi going crazy. It had referees, and like it felt. Oh, what was it? It felt endeared. It felt genuine.
And it was like, hey man, like what if all these like battles that we have on the battlefield we actually represent in a set that kind of makes sense for it? And it worked. And I don't feel like it needs to explain itself anymore.
Do you know what it is? It is the Vorthosian equivalent of Jumpstart being a Mel. Jumpstart being you take 2 random cultivated packs of cards and you jam them together, and some of them work better together, some of them don't, but because magical mechanics are so broad and so far-reaching, a lot of these mechanics can just drift across each other. It was that, but in a creative sense. So you're not just mechanically jamming them together. We're going, how do we make a set where the focus of your 2-player partner, how can we really lean into this? And again, multiplayer Magic is popular for a reason. It's interesting. It's a little bit more textured than just going, I know what's going to happen on turn 2, and if it doesn't happen, then my turn 3 is going to do that. 1v1 Magic can be very boring. It can be really technical, very, very intense, and really rewarding, but it can be very boring from a creative point of view. And Battle Bond felt like Magic's first kind of foray into going, we know how to take the multiplayer format and actually lean into it and give it some actual flavour, you know? And Two-Headed Giant was never really supported otherwise, and then they made Two-Headed Giant the set. Mm-hmm. That's very cool. Imagine Arch Enemy the set. I know. Anyway, New Capenna.
So, New Capenna, popularity, liked, so not super strong, but
this
whatever.
was controversial because America is one of the biggest countries for playing Magic. Obviously, it's an American game. And this was driven with American history.
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, not that popular.
I think it was... I mean, this isn't...
I loved the fucking set. I loved the vision of this set.
This isn't the hot take. This is a very tepid take. It's just Ravnica with Art Deco.
Yeah, I guess. And furries.
Popularity liked. Mechanical identity strong.
Again,
enough.
Factions were very good. They delivered.
Good. Yeah. Creative identity strong. I mean, it's pulling on recent history. You don't have to be that creative when people remember it or were born for it. Room for expansion. Significant room for expansion. Mario says this because the set is so unlike other Magic sets. It's not. It's Ravnica. And it taps into specific genre and look. Fair enough. There's a lot of unclaimed space that it could explore. Now, I would really rally against that. I think, much like Ravnica with its 10th district, and it could have the Rubble Belt as well, there is some room for expansion, but actually, if you were to go back to Capenna and not have it be about Art Deco gangsters fighting each other, it wouldn't be New Capenna?
I agree. The thing that I think the problem with this set was that they didn't do the police side of it for very, very good reasons. But it kind of meant that the only way and the only expansion they could go back to would focus on the thing they deliberately tried to not focus on. And if they did focus on the first thing they focused on the first time, there's nothing else to really focus on. You've done the Strixhaven thing, but you've also said that everywhere else in the plane is a Phyrexian wasteland.
Yeah.
So what do you go back to? The thing that they should have done with New Capenna, and I said this in the fucking Outlaws of Thunder Junction episode, they should have used what Capenna is and used the Omen Pass to take what Capenna is and branch that out into the other planes of the multiverse. Why isn't Ziatora going, hey, there's this whole new place that my riveters can fucking convert into this ridiculously... Now we've got the space. We're not limited to this stupid furnace layer. I know it's not the furnace layer, that's New Phyrexia, but it was the furnace layer of New Capenna. Why didn't they take these ideas and then put them out into other planes? Because you've done this very small snapshot of history. You've made a plane out of it. And there's not really much more you can do with that because you can't show the next era in history because that's this other plane that's already focused on that.
Imagine if Gonti brings the Union of the Riveteers to Kaladesh to outsource all the fucking...
But these are the things you could play around with, you know? Like, New Capenna, I think, just was a little bit too narrow in focus.
Story continuation, major plot line with the Angels.
That's the other thing. If you go back there, you then need to focus on this whole other thing that the story apparently said...
Which doesn't really push...
No, and it also isn't... It doesn't, from a mechanical point of view, it's not synonymous with the original set because it's this whole other thing that they didn't actually really focus on properly. And again, people were very curious as to why all of these fucking angel cards are in the set when the story doesn't support it. But then you can't just turn around and go, well, now we're going to focus on the angels because then the rest of the plane, just takes a sideline?
So this proves your theory from earlier. If we work in reverse order... Major plot line, significant room, strong, liked.
We're not going to go back.
The Rabiah scale is 6.
Yeah, right?
6!
And that's the thing, is popularity is the most important thing with these things. They're not going to put a plane back in circulation that people didn't buy into the first time. Unless they do something massively different, and at that point, why wouldn't you just do a different plane?
Yeah.
Because again, we said it right at the beginning. There's all these other planes that we've seen in battles and other things that you could focus on. Like one of my main points is now we're going through planes so quickly, year by year. We're going through maybe 3 or 4 of them a year. We're going to run out of interesting planes to focus on because you're going through them so quickly. So as back in the day, you used to be able to spend a year on a plane, and then maybe maybe even within 3 years, you'd go back to the same plane twice if it was, say, Dominaria. You wouldn't really travel that much in across 3 years. Whereas now you're going all over the fucking place, and there's a lot of planes that you just can't go back to that many times. So now maybe we're looking at the point of where do we have to look at the other planes that we only have touched on a little bit and we haven't done a full set on. But again, will those flash in the pan idea of planes like Xerix or Segovia, there are no dimensions or everything's really small, how do you turn that into a plane? It's like where you're running out of the things that have deep wells.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're also then getting planes like Bloomburrow that might have a deep well, we don't know until we go there. Thunder Junction.
I mean, he had to include it in this article.
Yeah. Popularity, too soon to tell. Obviously, this released as Thunder Junction was kind of just in its main swing of being released. Mechanical identity, strong. I actually kind of agree with this. I think mechanically, all of the abilities were very evocative, even if they were retreads of previous mechanics. And it's maybe something that, and when we do our individual flavour episodes, I kind of get really shitty on, where I'm like, this is just this mechanic, but slightly different. But when you think about it in terms outside of Magic's history and just at the plane itself, were all of the mechanics of the plane evocative? Were they all nuanced and engaging enough that I'm like, yeah, that makes sense with what it does?
They were all cowboy-y.
They did. As a plane, you think about Thunder Junction and all of these things fire off. Plots, crimes, all of these things actually kind of land really, really well. What was it? Not Mercer, Outlaws, literally.
Outlaws, yeah.
The grouping. All of these things actually really have resonance. The problem is the plane itself maybe doesn't. So popularity, too soon to tell. Mechanical identity, strong. Creative identity, strong. I agree, the visuals of it, for a plane that was, again, a very small desert kind of plane where all of these things are popping up, it still somehow really felt like somewhere you believed existed. Room for expansion, significant room for expansion. We've only just seen the birth and the population of this plane. What happens when we get a little bit further? What happens when the ley lines maybe fully form? Maybe this is a plane of where at the beginning you focus on all of these villains scrambling for power, but maybe the next step we go, this is a plane that's only really just discovering magic. And how magic works because it's getting infused with magic from the rest of the multiverse. And maybe certain planes are shut off and inert. Maybe some planes are super abundant because they've had so much collaboration. Maybe the reason why Zendikar originally had the Royal is because so many fucking planeswalkers went there, it had this connection to the rest of them. I'm really like going off on a tangent here, but this is the kind of thing that Thunder Junction could kind of focus on. Also, Queen Empire.
Well, the story continuation...
Minor plot.
Because
the only thing that was on there was the Fomori Vault, and that was about it. But that's good, because I feel like in certain aspects, the story continuation doesn't matter so much when you, as the creative control, can put whatever story the fuck you want in there. The fact that there's enough room for expansion and enough mechanical and creative identity, it means that kind of you should be able to then kind of push it wherever you want it to go, if it's relevant and if you need it to. Maybe this is still the plane that Angrath came from, we just didn't get to see him this time. Maybe he specifically wants to avoid and be away from everything now. He's had a little bit of involvement with the main Magic storyline. What are we going to call it? The what's it called in Loki? The whatever timeline, the blessed timeline, the true timeline. You know, like the through line of Magic story that we focus on. Maybe Angrath wanted to.
What's it called?
I can't remember now.
Sanctified.
I know it's really like we're going to use every other word. Anyway. But maybe Angrath was there the whole time, but wanted to avoid being in the action. Sacred, thank you. Yes. So maybe he was there. Maybe we go back, and this time we just focus on him, and he accidentally backdoors into a random stupid nonsense. You know, who knows? Anyway, Rabiah Scale rating 5.
5 is so non-committal.
Flexible mechanics, flavorful top-down plane, good reason to return. Again, it's early, so a lot of this is based on initial reactions. And that's it. That's the only planes we've had in the last 6 years that haven't actually already been touched on. Which, when you think, let me count. Say things while I count quickly.
Well, I'm just looking at the planes which were in the previous articles that had, say, so if Kamigawa was like, okay, that was an 8, and we got back there. If it's 9 and 10, you got Marcadia's 9, Phyrexia is 9, but we went back to Phyrexia.
No, we went back to New Phyrexia, which was a 5.
Enough. Yes, you're quite right. Rabiah is 10, obviously, because that's the name of the scale. Wrath is 9.
Because of the overlay, it's very unlikely.
And Olgratha is 9.
Olgratha, again, it's the dark. No one's going to go back. The only interesting thing about that was Sengir. You can just drop a Sengir character every now and again, which they've been doing.
Which means...
Battle for Olgratha has happened since then. So we actually we've seen that they're willing to touch on the flavour of planes, but not actually really revisit them.
Which means that they're playing it much safer, because nothing was less than a 5 in this list?
True. And there's only 7 of them. I did count. There's only 7. So that's actually not that many more planes we're adding to the list.
They're really leaving their options
3,
open.
4, 5, 4. I mean, no, Kylem was an 8, but that's fair because Kylem is such a gimmick.
Sorry,
and we actually haven't said that word really at all this podcast, but Kylem was the definition of a gimmick plane. And gimmicks.
New Capenna is a 6.
And I think, again, flavorfully, that's a gimmick, right? This particular slice of time, this particular
it's very narrow
cliche, this particular film noir style, or whatever you want to call it, like that particular thing is a gimmick, and the gimmicks are hard to replicate. And yes, the reason why Strixhaven we talked about a lot was because the gimmick of high school might be overplayed, but there's other things you can focus on. Ikoria, the gimmick of the kaiju is overplayed. Is there something else you can focus on? That's literally what Magic is going to be focusing on over the next 10 years is what is the gimmick? Can we make it interesting enough for people to feel like there's integrity? But can it be enough of a gimmick that it hooks the average player and makes the whole, magpie sparkly? Oh, that's a cool new shiny thing, yay. And it needs to hit that middle ground because it has to be commercially viable whilst also still feeling like it belongs in the world of Magic.
Yeah.
And there is a line on both of those things of where it goes too far and they won't push it that far. But the amount of space between those two things is quite wide. The fact they're willing to do a Final Fantasy set and the fact they're willing to do now a Marvel set means that we need to think that and this might actually be, now I think about it, this might actually be a symptom of the problem, right? Of where they've bounced across so many sets so quickly recently. They're running out of new planes to go to that have the cool gimmick that they can go to because they're running out of kind of real creative space that they go, the best way to do that is space out the new properties and fill it with IPs that people recognize that we can put through the lens of Magic, Final Fantasy, Marvel, even the originals, things like Fortnite, whatever. That kind of spaces out now these new unique like only within Magic what's the word true IPs, Magic IPs. They can space those out now with other IPs that kind of fill the gap to then go, right, how can we actually make these resonate and make these really popular? Because we are actually really running through them too quickly. And if they refuse to do multi-block sets, or multi-set blocks, sorry, because they keep needing to jump between things and they put other IPs in to balance them, it doesn't matter so much when you're only on a plane for one time, but it does mean that certain sets and certain planes like Kaldheim are much harder to go back to than, say, something like Ikoria. There's much less to go back to for Ikoria, but you can make a random gimmick set for Ikoria much more easily than you can Kaldheim and shove it in between two other IPs. Whereas with Kaldheim, if you want to sit there for half a year, 6 months and go, we're settling back on this Norse kind of theme. Unless there's something in popular culture, whether Thor's got a new film coming out, the Norseman has a new season that's coming out, and you go, hey, Vikings are cool again. Maybe we spend 6 months on Vikings. It's one of those things of you need to keep your audience captured. And obviously we're now getting to a point of where Hasbro knows that Wizards is the thing you can squeeze. And it has so much versatility that you can do all these different swings. You can do a Fallout 2-month, 3-month kind of skin. And then balance it out with the fact that Fallout, the series, was then really, really popular. We're not going to talk about Fallout, I don't think, because it's already been and gone. And there's no point ruminating on popular things that worked. But that was a real example of you find the moment, you do the thing, you do it well, and people like it, and they invest in it, and they give you some money so you can keep making your thing for us. Thank you. So let's see. Let's see. Who knows? The fact they've still got things like Lorwyn and Tarkid coming up, which are still independent properties. Duskmourn, Bloomburrow, Magic properties that we can maybe revisit. I think Duskmourn less likely than Bloomburrow.
This is definitely the tide coming back in.
Yeah. And at the same time, we've still got Assassin's Creed, Marvel, and Final Fantasy all coming out within the next 18 months. We can ignore if we want to or not. But the fact that these things are still present whilst it still feels the tide's coming back in is kind of interesting, right?
Where do you want to go back to?
My biggest one has always been Lorwyn. Off the back of Kamigawa, I can only hope that they do the same justice. I don't know how you can hit the same notes of Lorwyn, and the main reason I say this is because I am such a different person now, as both a person and as a Magic player, than I was when I first interacted with Lorwyn, that I don't know what my nostalgia would accept or deny. The fact I was able to see Aisling and Roisin made me go, yay, these characters again. But they didn't feel like
the
Lorwyn.
The art direction's going to be different.
It didn't feel like Lorwyn. It didn't feel like, yes, this is the set. It just felt like, I know those characters. So can they deliver a set? And I don't know if Kamigawa did it, but because Kamigawa Neon Dynasty was such a good set, it didn't matter that it didn't hit the same notes that the Kamigawa block did for me. And they did hit very different notes, but they still hit very good notes. For me, I don't think you can do the nostalgia of Lorwyn justice, because Eldraine kind of treaded that same kind of idea already.
Yeah.
So you have to do something different. You still need to make it feel like Lorwyn. I honestly don't know. And that's where I sit right now. Is there's nothing else I really want to go back to, because nothing else on my list. I mean, I would like to see us finally tie up the ends of Chandler. I would like to see the Chain Veil and the Anarchy just be put to bed and it be done, so we never have to talk about Chandler again. Because it has enough significance, and that's important. That's stuff that's good. That's stuff that's important. Chain Veil, also relevant. That's something we can just tie a little bow on, but do a big bang with, you know? It's very rarely that I want to see a big bang, because it usually means the end of a plane or the end of certain characters. But something like Chandler, do it. Have some big fucking finale that finishes something, destroys a continent. It doesn't matter. We're never going back there again. You know.
I'd like to go back to Vryn.
I think that's going to happen.
The Rabiah Scale is 6th.
Well, I think that the Wacky Races plane is likely to take place.
No. I want a full set.
How much of that comes down to
post-apocalyptic, decrepit magic plane?
How much of this comes down to the epilogue story of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, where we went back and saw Jace's mum?
At least 30%.
Right? Because it did show this whole... It gave some... Do you know what it felt like? It felt like Brothers War. It felt like Brothers War stories.
It felt like magic.
Yeah. It felt like old school mechs versus magic, bad civil war, not...
There's political intrigue with the different factions.
Hi, I'm a cat with a blazer and a waistcoat and a quiff. And I do finger gun magic.
Yeah.
And that's real. That exists.
I want to see Vryn.
Yeah, cool.
Well, let's keep it there. Almost under an hour, but by the time we stop talking. Let us know what you think of the latest Rabiah Scale article. We'll link it in the description below.
Where do you want to go back to?
Where do you want to go back to?
Have a look at the invasions card. You know, all of the invasion cards from Will Be March of the Machines. Can never remember which one it is.
March of the All Will Be One Machines.
Yeah, right. Look at those, because there are some cool sets. Maybe you want to be like, hey, Fiora. I mean, I know Fiora was on the main set, and it's probably not going to be.
But then we saw Marchesa and Cowboys, and we were
yeah, exactly right. So yeah, tell us, because this is the interesting thing, right? Like, we can speculate what's going to happen over the next few years, but it's actually more interesting now to talk about sets within Magic than sets without Magic, because that's actually kind of what everyone seems to be focusing on. Is, oh my god, we're going to get Iron Man. Oh my god, we're going to get Cloud Strife. I don't care. Give me a mouse with a sword.
Yeah.
Right. That's more interesting.
This is pure Vorthosian.
Pure Vorthosian. Yes, this isn't us reflecting Vorthosian understanding of magic onto IPs that we already understand from other things from our childhood, which is really cool, right, Ding? It's this independent fucking product representing itself and only itself.
Nathan's doing his thing, which I've seen for many times now over the decades. When he's had a drink, he starts doing this like lean in big arm motion thing, and he just did it then. So I think we're going to cap it there.
Good.
You can send your opinions to our Twitter account at mtflavouring. That's with an O-U-R. Thank you very much. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal X account, Twitter account, is at AndyMan with 2 N's, face. And Nathan's, yours is?
At the Fox in the Moon.
Thank you so much for listening. We will be at MagicCon Amsterdam.
This is definitely going to come out after that.
No. I'm going to try and get this one in before.
Oh, you're going to do back-to-back ones?
Yes.
Oh my god, people are not know what to do.
They can be like, 2 in 2 weeks.
I'm not entirely sure how many of the syllables I meant to say in that last sentence.
I'm going to get this one out before MagicCon Amsterdam, so which means this is probably one of our lowest rated episodes.
Thank you, Louis de Camponac. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Favourite.
We'll see you soon.